Thank you, Randy. I'm Tim Willoughby here with Ben Stark, and we're about ready to start round 5 here at the World Magic Cup. We've got Team Hong Kong against Team Lithuania down the feature match area. Let's go down and check it out. Hello and welcome to round 5 here at the World Magic Cup. We've got Team Hong Kong on the left of our screen. They're at 3 wins and a draw, paired against Lithuania, currently at 3-1, and 2 big name players, both in Seat C, that are going to be paired up in this round. So the team captains, Li Shiqian from Hong Kong is the captain there. He is playing the same deck that he played at the Pro Tour. So it's Pro Tour top 8 finish, Jeskai Ascendancy combo. And his opponent there, we see him with a flag on his face. Godenis Vidugaris, he's playing a greenback Constellation. So 2 interesting decks here that are not necessarily ones that we would expect to see quite so much of from some of the other teams. Li Shiqian here kicking things off with a Temple. Lots of scry in this deck because it is a combo deck. It's looking to get the exact right combination of cards, and the big one really is getting that Jeskai Ascendancy and then just appropriate spells to be able to win in one big turn. Right.
What this Ascendancy combo deck usually has problems with is hyper-aggressive decks, because sometimes it takes time for it to piece its combo together, and it's usually good against slow, powerful green decks. And I think that's what we're seeing here. I think that this is a matchup that will greatly favor the combo deck.
Yeah, the white-blue heroic note down in the bottom corner there, that's not quite accurate. We've actually got a green-black Constellation deck here from Godenis Vidugaris, turn 1 Elvish Mystic from him, and even though Mystic does accelerate things out, this is not necessarily a deck that's going to be super-duper quick, and that kind of almost explains the way that Godenis tends to play his games of Magic also. Not necessarily known for winning matches super fast, but he is known for winning matches, and this is going to be an interesting one for him because his deck doesn't necessarily interact super well against Jeskai Ascendancy, at least in game 1.
No, one of the best cards he has in his deck, though, it does look like he has in his hand, and that's Thoughtseize. That's one of his only ways to really interact with the combo deck and maybe disrupt them, maybe take the only copy of Jeskai Ascendancy that Li Shiqian can find, you know, hopefully for Godenis. And he's only running 2 Thoughtseize, so it's not that likely that he would have one, especially early, but he does. So let's see if he can disrupt this combo deck.
Yeah, we saw there Communion with the Gods finding a Kiora's follower for Li Shiqian. But, I mean, in terms of the overall structure of what he's looking to do, the follower just one piece of the puzzle. And early on, it looks like Godenis saying, I'd rather just make sure I hit my land drops. Satyr Wayfinder putting 3 creatures in the bin and a Temple of Malady in his hand, which immediately gets played for a scry.
Yeah, and Godenis didn't have the option to even Thoughtseize. I think if he drew an untapped black source, he would have Thoughtseized because he knows this is the turn where Li Shiqian can cast Jeskai Ascendancy. He can't go off, but if he puts it in play, it can no longer be made. He can no longer be made to discard it, and I don't think Godenis' deck can really remove it. As is, you know, he chooses to play the creature first because you have to have the creature out already in order to be able to go off.
And, of course, the creatures that were put in the graveyard there by Godenis Vidugaris, there's nothing to say they're not going to come back at some point. There is a Whip of Erebos in his hand, and in terms of creatures to bring back with a whip, there are a few better options than the ones that are already in his graveyard, a Hornet Queen and a Doomwake Giant. But look at that hand. Yeah. 3 copies of Jeskai Ascendancy.
And you see why he didn't play the Jeskai Ascendancy, because he wasn't worried about discarding the Jeskai Ascendancy because he has 3 copies of it, whereas he was worried about discarding the Kiora's follower because you need the creature and the Ascendancy, and he only has the 1 creature.
Now, Godenis having a good old read here of a copy of Twin Flame, because Twin Flame, one of the more unusual cards that was in this Hong Kong list that wasn't necessarily in all of the Jeskai Ascendancy lists. Now, what that does is it lets you put a copy of a creature into play. It's going to have haste until the end of the turn, and that means that while you're going off, you can potentially end up making extra creatures that can tap and untap and tap and untap and do all sorts of crazy things. So there, with the Thoughtseize, he doesn't take either the Ascendancy or the Twin Flame. He takes Retraction Helix. Now, what does Retraction Helix do, you say? Well, it enables effectively an infinite combo. You can start playing a 0-cost spell. That will untap all of your creatures. if one of your creatures taps to bounce something, well, you can bounce that zero-cost artifact, and then you can keep recasting and recasting and recasting. Your creatures are getting bigger, you're getting to loot. Eventually, the Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck, well, it just attacks for the win in one big swing. Here's the Jeskai Ascendancy from Li Shiqian. He's got two pieces of his puzzle. He's got a creature that can effectively tap for mana, in this case by untapping a land. He's got the Jeskai Ascendancy. There's a few extra things that he needs to get going, but Li Shiqian is in pretty reasonable shape here because Godenis not producing too much disruption.
Right, and that's what makes this a good matchup for Li Shiqian. I don't know whether he'll win this game or not. It depends on what he's able to find, because obviously he still needs to find another copy of Retraction Helix, since Godenis was able to Thoughtseize it, and he needs to find the zero-mana artifact. But Godenis' deck is not very good at applying pressure. Here you see it's turn 4, and I think most of the damage Li Shiqian has taken is from his own mana confluence.
Yeah, and having that Jeskai Ascendancy in play really does help you dig to things as well, because every time he's casting a spell, he's getting to loot, which is draw and discard a card. It may well be that he chooses to play a second Jeskai Ascendancy, which kind of turbocharges everything that he's doing from then on. He gets extra untaps, he gets to draw lots of cards, and so even though it looks like this is a complicated combo where you need to draw a lot of pieces, spoiler, it is, you still have the means to find those pieces.
Right, and the second Ascendancy can also help you go off, because that means your creature untaps twice every time you play a spell, and you can pool mana in between the untap.
Wow.
So, yeah, so if you then have a Retraction Helix, you don't need a zero-mana artifact. You can go off with a one-mana enchantment as well.
So powerful stuff there. And of course, the Kiora's Follower, because it can untap any land, effectively it can produce an awful lot of different colors of mana for Li Shiqian if he needs it. So here he's tapping various lands, untapping them, casting the second Jeskai Ascendancy, triggering the first, and here's where we get to start to see what this Ascendancy combo deck can do. So this is lots of sets of triggers. This is the sort of thing that when you're playing the deck on Magic Online gets really complicated. There's a lot of clicking involved, making sure you stack all of your triggers appropriately. Li Shiqian, a technically very good player, and don't forget, he did play this deck to a top 8 finish at Pro Tour Khans of Tarkir, so very experienced with going through the motions with this, the relatively complicated combo deck.
Yeah, it's interesting to see what an experienced combo player does in spots like this. Honestly, I don't know whether he can go off this turn or not. I mean, obviously the potential exists, but with what he already has, he might be able to. I think he's basically doing these just to start pulling some mana and doing some looting, because Godenis is tapped out. So if he finds the combo pieces he needs, he'll definitely be able to go off.
So here, Godenis reading the Twin Flame again. It's going to get to make an extra copy of a creature in play. It's not going to get strived, I wouldn't imagine, at this point. That creature's going to come in play with haste. So now there's going to be 2 copies of Kiora's Follower in play. Each of them can tap to untap things this turn. Each of them is going to get untapped every time he casts a spell. So there's lots and lots of great stuff happening here for Li Shiqian. And he's going to get a lot of looting with every single spell he casts, drawing and discarding twice for every spell.
Right, at this point, I think Li Shiqian is trying to go off. I think he can make quite a bit of mana and looting, but I think he needs to find Dragon Mantles, Retraction Helixes, in order to piece together the full combo and actually go off and not give Godenis another turn.
So that Li Shiqian token there, the Platinum Player token, that represents another Kiora's Follower. Unsurprisingly, we don't have Kiora's Follower tokens available in our feature match area, but I don't think we're going to begrudge Li Shiqian using the card with his own face on it here to make things happen. And a dig through time means that he is able to look very, very deep in his deck. There we see it. He's not having to pay the full 8. There's plenty of cards to delve in his graveyard already. And he's going to have lots of triggers to resolve. So this a key area for great communication.
Yeah, and he's seeing 9 cards now with the 2 loots off the Ascendancies and the 7 from the dig through time. And I believe if he can find Retraction Helix plus any thing to bounce that costs less than 2, Dragon Mantle or a 0-mana artifact, I believe he will go effectively infinite this turn.
Yeah, I mean, looking at 7 cards and getting 2, it seems very unlikely at this point that he's not going to get where he needs to go.
Well, he got the artifact, but the thing is, there was already a Retraction Helix Thoughtseize, and I think he does need a Retraction Helix, and I don't think he has that yet. Now, he does have Tormenting Voice to discard, so he's going to get another 4 cards deep with that. Even just playing the 0-mana artifact gives him 2 loots, so that's another 2 cards deep. But I do believe, I'm not 100%, because this deck is one of the most complicated standard decks, but I do believe he needs to find a Retraction Helix.
Now, let's have a little talk just while he's going off here about one of the reasons that this deck is such a great choice, assuming that you can play it in this format. it uses very, very few cards that any other deck in Standard does.
Right, only Solvin Caryatid, basically. I mean, that's a big one. Of course, there are a lot of green decks. But as Nate pointed out during the lunch break when we were discussing Team Unified Standard, there's the Abzan aggro deck that Mike Sigrist top-aided Pro Tour KTK with, and that deck plays Courser but does not play Caryatid, so it makes it almost a perfect match with this deck for Team Unified Standard.
And we do actually see that in terms of the Hong Kong deck lists overall, there is a really strong, aggressive Abzan deck. There is a full Jeskai build. It seems crazy you can have a Jeskai Ascendancy deck and then a Jeskai deck as well. But that is possible, and that's exactly what Team Hong Kong are doing. And they've got the great pilot for their Jeskai Ascendancy deck, which means that the rest of their team is really able to turn the screws on just about any opponent.
Right, and this deck is really hard for me to judge. I'm not a combo player. If this deck is tier 1, then this is a really excellent 3 decks to play in Team Unified Standard, because you get Abzan aggro, which is clearly tier 1, a full Jeskai deck, which is clearly tier 1. So if this deck is truly tier 1, consistent enough, you're talking about 3 decks that are basically pulling nothing from each other, just 3 individual standard decks here together on a team.
And here we see Tormenting Voice letting Li Shiqian draw more and more cards. There's a Dragon Mantle. Dragon Mantle is going to let Li Shiqian draw even more cards. So a fairly innocuous-looking enchantment doesn't necessarily seem like something that would make sense to have in a combo deck like this. But the important thing is it costs 1 mana, it draws you a card. And when you're effectively getting 2 mana for every spell you cast, I mean, all you need to do is draw into your combo. This gets you there.
I laughed a little because he didn't find Retraction Helix yet, but he found Dig Through Time. So now he's going to see another 9 cards trying to find this Retraction Helix.
And there's also an Astral Cornucopia in there, so that potentially another free spell to get another couple of loots. There's all sorts of different options available to Li Shiqian here just to finally finish off his combo.
I'm sure he's going to find it now, but if he didn't find it, I wonder how much he could attack for with those 2 Kiora's followers.
There have been quite a few spells played this turn. I'm sure that somewhere within all of this bookkeeping, Li Shiqian has been keeping careful record of exactly how big his creatures are. There's only the 1 blocker available to Go Dennis. It's got lifelink, so effectively he'd need to deal 20, but I think that there we have it. I think Li Shiqian did find the final piece of his puzzle, that being a Retraction Helix. At that point, he can effectively set up to attack for infinite, more or less. But we're going to take a quick break. We'll be back with some more Magic for you very, very shortly after these messages.
Ultra Pro is the place to go for all your Magic accessories. With card sleeves, deck boxes, playmats, and portfolios showing off the best Magic art, Ultra Pro is the standard in safe storage. Visit ultrapro.com for more information. You've watched the Pro Tour. How about playing on the Pro Tour? Qualifiers for Pro Tour Dragons of Tarkir start December 13th, with winners earning an invitation and airfare to Brussels in April. Visit magic.wizards.com/PTQ for more information.
Now, you'll see that there's not a huge amount of Magic being played on the tables right now, and how good that is really depends on which side of the table you're sitting. Right now, as it stands, Hong Kong has the Game 1 sweep. There's a nice position to be in. It certainly feels good knowing that somewhere between your 3 matches that are going on, you can afford to drop a game or 2 somewhere.
I'm sure it does, but the one thing I will say from looking at the deck list is I think this matchup gets considerably better for Go Dennis after sideboard. I'm not even sure if he becomes a favorite or not, but I think Game 1 was really rough for him. We see in Go Dennis's sideboard he has 2 Thoughtseizes more to go to 4, which I thought was the best card in his deck versus that deck. He also has 2 Reclamation Sage. Even though they can go off the turn that they play it, they don't always do that because they start to use the looting, as you saw, to find the rest of the combo. He has 3 Heroes Downfalls, which, you know, might be good, might not. I mean, it has a shot to kill non-Caryatids. 1 in the main, he can go up to 4, but 3 in the board. 2 Read the Bones to help find more Thoughtseize, which I think he'll want as well, just so he can dig into these Thoughtseizes and Reclamation Sages and removal spells to try and stop the combo deck from going off. So even though that's a lot of disruption, I think a good clock is better at stopping the Jeskai Ascendancy deck. So I don't think this is a great matchup for Go Dennis, but where I think Game 1 was, I don't want to say unwinnable, but I think he was a huge underdog. I think Game 2 and 3 will be much closer to 50-50.
Of course, having to win 2 on the bounce 50-50 means about 25% of the time you're getting there, but he has the tools to be able to do so, and Go Dennis Verduga is a very, very strong player, representing the Lithuanian team once more. And yeah, it's going to be interesting that sort of often we kind of just look at matchups and go, right, who's the control, who's the beatdown, the relatively sort of straightforward view of it. When you've got combo in the mix, it can be really difficult to know where you sit in that sort of situation.
Right, and the problem for Godenis is, you know, he's the control versus combo, but he's a counterspell-less control, so he doesn't really have that many ways to stop the combo deck, and he certainly can't pressure them well because the whip decks are very slow. They're very powerful, but they're very slow. They do not attack for a lot of damage quickly at all. So he really needs to be able to break up that combo. And, you know, a couple of Thought Seizes and some Heroes Downfalls to Reclamation Sage isn't really the best, you know, set of weapons to do that.
Yeah, I mean, we saw in Game 1, he had the Thought Seize. I mean, that's kind of exactly what you want, and it just wasn't quite enough. But we have got some magic going on for you now, so we will get a chance to see a little bit more of what's going on in Team Hong Kong versus Team Lithuania over in total. This, a Thought Seize here, meaning we get to get a little bit of a look at one of the other hands, and this, a very different beast entirely. This blue-white heroic. So if Hong Kong was looking to go off with a combo deck that's moving sort of in a more regular combo fashion, Soloist Kiskis with his heroic deck is saying, my combo is I'm going to get some creatures in play, make them really big really fast.
Yeah, this could be a set of pairings that really favor Hong Kong. I mean, with the combo deck, a big favorite against the whip deck. And the Abzan aggro, I believe, is a pretty good against the white-blue heroic. It has removal, it has Thoughtseize, and it has pressure. So I think it's quite good against the white-blue heroic deck.
Something to bear in mind, actually, the matchup that we watched there was both of the pro players for their teams on table C. Now, how much do you think that there's value in teams trying to figure out the best position for their best players?
I don't know. I tend not to really put a lot of stock in that kind of stuff. People can always level. People can always say, well, I think the other guys are going to do this. Personally, I think it's much better to have guys play decks that fit their play style and that they have experience with. I wouldn't really worry about where you put people in terms of seed A, seed B, or seed C.
And we certainly see here that it looks like purely by sort of luck of the draw, Hong Kong have ended up with some relatively favourable matchups. A turn 2 Fleece main line following up that Thoughtseize that took a hero of Aroas from Soloist Kiskis' hand. So the 3-3 already in play there. We can see that if Gamma Ip gets up to 5 mana, he can make it into a 4-4 monstrous, hexproof, indestructible cat. As it is, though, a 3-3 on turn 2 is going to do a number on Kiskis' life total without too much help. And we see there the Lithuanian having to play a Defiant Strike on it, simply to draw a card, just trying to find more creatures to kind of get back in this game.
This blue-white heroic deck is incredible at goldfishing, but it gets a lot of really shaky draws, where a single Thoughtseize, a Thoughtseize plus a removal spell take out the only creatures it sees for most of the game, or it draws 2 to 3 creatures, and then the Thoughtseize plus the 1 removal takes out the 1 big hero they can make, or the key enchantments. So I think that a deck with good disruption like Abzan aggro plus a clock can really punish the vulnerability of the blue-white heroic deck.
Yeah, and we see here that even though there's been some life lost thanks to Thoughtseize, even though there's been some life lost thanks to Langwar Wastes, there's 2 copies of Fleece Mainline in play for Gamma Ip, and those are going to be doing some real damage, even in spite of this Heliod's Pilgrim here finding an enchantment for, finding an aura for Soloist Kiskis.
I'm curious to what he can get, because this is almost like a toolbox deck. Last weekend, I think Luis was referring to Heliod's Pilgrim as Stoneforge Mystic.
Wow.
Yeah.
High praise.
You know, maybe not exactly accurate, but, you know.
They are both 1/2s.
Right, and they do both search your library for something. So they can play a lot of 1-ofs if they want in this deck to be able to search out.
And Spectra Ward's a pretty good one to search out. If you're looking for something that trumps in a creature match, +2/+2 and protection from all colours is certainly a great place to start, but it may be a little bit slow in this match against Gamma Ip.
Yeah, and I don't think he has that in the main. I think he boarded that in. It looks like there's one there. I don't think we saw that last weekend in San Antonio, so it's kind of interesting. I could certainly see its ability to break some stalemates against mono green and things like that. It's going to be tough to land against a green-black variety, of course, because if he has a removal, if he has mana for removal, you can basically never cast it unless you absolutely have to, because you know you can get hugely blown out when they kill the creature you're trying to enchant.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately the game plan of this blue-white heroic deck is create a big scary monster and make sure it can attack unimpeded. So giving protection from all colors is certainly a great way of making sure your creature can attack unimpeded. It's just a matter of first you need to actually get there, and in the meantime Gamma is saying, well, I'm just going straight for the throat. Here's a Siege Rhino to join my couple of Fleecemane Lions, and Soleus Kiskis very quickly approaching just single-digit life totals here.
Yeah, and Gamma has a Banishing Light in hand, so even though he won't be able to get a blowout, quote-unquote, by taking out the creature that's, you know, enchanted because it'll have protection from everything, he can take out the Spectral Ward, I believe.
Yeah.
In which case, that'll turn that Helios Pilgrim back into a 1-2, and it won't stop anything in play. So, I mean, I'm not really sure what's going to happen here for Soleus to be able to win this game. He'd have to have cards that I just can't see that deck playing, like an End Hostilities.
So as it is, just the 1-2 in play. It did get to stay around thanks to a God's Willing, keeping it alive there. That also giving Kiskis a bit of a scry there. And there's a Feat of Resistance in Kiskis' hand also, which means that he's got plenty of options to keep creatures alive. Not so many options to keep himself alive, though.
Yeah.
Has to extend the hand. So congratulations to Team Hong Kong. They are going great guns here, picking up their first match win. We already know that they're up a few games, and we're going to get a chance to jump across to our match on table B here. So here we get to see what the power of the Jeskai deck is from Hong Kong, and it looks like it's something of a Jeskai mirror here.
Yeah, and it looks like Lithuania is playing the Yuya-style Jeskai that he's in the top 4 of the World Championships with right now, which is more of a token combo deck, playing Jeskai Ascendancy, Hordling Outburst, Raise the Alarm, and then some of the usual suspects like Seeker of the Way and Goblin Rabblemaster.
So when we said that the Jeskai Ascendancy deck doesn't take away many cards from other decks in Standard, turns out there's one deck in Standard that really can't be played alongside it, and that being the other Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck that can just kind of go aggro. Yeah,
this is a completely different Jeskai Ascendancy combo deck. It's not trying to go infinite, it's just trying to really get a lot of value out of the +1/+1 from Jeskai Ascendancy, as well as using the loot effect to keep finding more spells. And you put a lot of cards in the graveyard that way, and they play 4 Treasure Cruise.
Certainly couldn't hurt. And all of the, like many of the spells in this deck making tokens, also pumping whatever tokens in play. This is a very powerful aggro deck that also has a couple of control options. It's got some Disdainful Strokes in the sideboard if needed. It's got Elspeth in the sideboard. This actually looks almost exactly card for card the list that Yuya Watanabe has played to get himself into the top 4 of the Players' Championship.
So we see the traditional Jeskai deck playing a turn 3 Mantis Rider. It's kind of staple play. And we see the combo tokens deck playing Rabblemaster.
Makes sense to get those tokens in where you're playing Rabblemaster, yeah?
Yeah, I'm kind of interested in how this matchup's going to go, because personally I've been on the regular Jeskai deck since it came out. But, I mean, you know, it's not that big of an adjustment maybe to switch to a little different build for Jeskai. And at the moment, this is another brand new deck coming out of the World Championships. So I'm personally really curious to see how it performs in this tournament, and if it's something I maybe want to try and pick up in Standard moving forward.
Yeah, I mean, there's been kind of shades of this deck. I mean, certainly at the Pro Tour, I think there were a couple of players playing variations on this. They've been at some other big events. There was a more combo version of the Jeskai tokens deck that could, in principle, go infinite. It looks like Yuya decided to trim that part out of the deck and just say, making tokens and making them big is good enough. Both of these decks, though, are able to make tokens. We see Rabblemasters on both sides of the board. The Mantis Rider, at the moment, kind of the decisive factor, because it's the one that's attacking for 3 in the air each and every turn. So there we see the Rabblemaster. That every turn it gets to make a token. Those tokens do have to attack, so they may well end up kind of bouncing off each other a little bit. Meanwhile, the Rabblemaster, when it attacks, is getting +1 power for each other attacking goblins. So on its own, it represents a pretty significant threat.
Yeah, it would be interesting to see whether Meng would trade the Mantis Rider for the Rabblemaster, but obviously Gabrielis is not going to give him that option.
Yeah, that there, Glare of Heresy, it's something that can exile. Yeah, we're able to, with a Glare of Heresy, get rid of any white permanent. At the moment, not necessarily too many white permanents to worry about, so the Mantis Rider are a perfectly reasonable thing to take down. And if it's unanswered, that Goblin Rabblemaster will end things pretty quickly.
And this is a big advantage. I don't necessarily know that much about the Jeskai Ascendancy deck that Yuya built that's brand new, but the traditional Jeskai deck, anytime you're playing the Mirror and you get to hit with a Mantis Rider or make a 1/1 token from Rabblemaster, it's a pretty big advantage because the deck has to kill each creature in play individually because it doesn't usually play any sweepers.
And let's take a little look at the hand of Zhang here. So he's got a disdainful stroke. That one might actually be a little bit awkwardly placed here. Not necessarily so many expensive spells left in the Lithuanian tokens deck, but Brimaz in play will certainly be a perfectly reasonable blocker for much of what's going on. And if he gets to start attacking with it and making tokens, it will potentially balance up this board a little bit. We're
going to see a huge turn for Meng here because there's no way that Gabrielis is not going to try and stoke that Brimaz. I'm not sure exactly what he'll attack with and like what he'll tap, but he's certainly going to cast as much stuff as he can and then attempt to stoke Brimaz right now.
So a second Goblin Rebel Master is going to bring with it a token when it gets to the attack step. Suddenly he's going to have enough creatures in play to be able to tap them to convoke out Stoke the Flames. Now, with 2 copies of Goblin Rabble Master in play, in principle, they would both have to attack, because they each force each other to do so. And by not tapping one of his Rabble Masters, it's now going to have to run into that Brimaz.
Yeah, this is really a blowout. This was like a huge blowout here. I mean, Gabrielis has a lot more resources available, but the way those cards just lined up, he got him. I'm not sure if Gabrielis should have done anything differently because it's really hard to put the last card in Meng's hand as a disdainful stroke.
Yeah, it's a tricky one because up to a point, if he had had that read, then simply tapping both of his Rabble Masters would have been a little bit of a safer option.
Well, one thing he could do was that would have been interesting is maybe just stoke with mana up for negate or I don't know if he had enough to do negate or Rabble Master though, so that would be a big sacrifice. If he did stoke it with negate up though, it would definitely die, and then he could make a 1/1 during the attack step with Rabble Master. That's a really conservative line, but it plays around disdainful stroke, so that would have been interesting.
Here we see all 4 players from each team currently watching this match intently. Godenis Vidugaris especially looks more animated than I've seen him in a while. And that's basically, we're holding the match on the back table. We're trying to get as much magic in as possible for you. So in principle, all 4 players can potentially give a little bit of information to each other, discuss plays and make sure they come up with the right lines. Now, the challenge to that is, that's a lot of chatter when you're trying to get to the right decision.
And Gabrielis top decked another stoke. So now he is going to be able to remove that Brimaz and maybe swing this game back.
All of the Hong Kong players here looking on as Kakalaukas is, with his Lithuanian flag on his face, just figuring out the best sequencing for his play here.
Yeah, that one turn was really interesting. I mean, now, you know, he's definitely just going to kill Brimaz. He's just figuring out whether he wants to leave 2 open for negate, you know, tap a 1/1, or whether he wants to just tap 4 mana and then have all the 1/1s attack. It's a very close play because you know there are powerful spells that Meng could draw, and you know that Gabrielis has negate in hand. Personally, I'd probably leave the mana up because, you know, you have the Rabble Master to end the game really quickly, so if you just blank his next turn with negate, then you're almost definitely going to win. And he has Chandra, so he's probably going to be able to find something with 2 cards that can maybe kill Rabble Master. So I really like this play. I really like leaving the 2 up, tapping the 1 token, not getting greedy. Now he can send everything at Chandra, and, you know, this is going to basically put Meng, you know, he's going to put his back to the wall. I mean, he can trade with a 1/1 and let the Chandra die. He can chump the Rabble Master and have the Chandra go to 3. He's definitely going to have to really draw a good card, maybe a good 2 cards on his next turn, 1 for his draw step and 1 off Chandra to be able to swing this game back.
Yeah, Zhang is now playing off the top of his deck. I think that for that reason alone, it's a good reason to keep Chandra alive, and he's going to have to hope that everything works out pretty well for him here.
One thing that negate doesn't do is counter creatures. So, you know, if Meng can find good creatures that can maybe threaten Gabrielis' life total and be able to block Rabble Master, that might give him a shot. If he finds an expensive spell, like I believe he just drew a stoke, he's really out of the game because, you know, we know, he doesn't know, but we know Gabrielis has a negate for the stoke.
And so there comes the stoke. That prompts the negate. He knows that there's nothing else in Zhang's hand, and with just 1 mana available, I guess that Zhang here is probably just going to +1 his Planeswalker because it's very unlikely he's going to be able to cast much for 1 mana.
Right, and Gabrielis is going to definitely be able to take out the Planeswalker on his next turn, leaving Meng empty boarded and at a huge disadvantage. There are cards that could still swing this game. It would take a Wrath effect, or it would take him just really outdrawing Gabrielis, you know, down the stretch, because, I mean, it's not like Gabrielis' board is commanding. It's basically a Rabble Master and some tokens. So if he does top deck, say, a Lightning Strike, Magma Jet, something like that to kill the Rabble Master on his next turn, He's still going to be behind to 3/1/1 tokens, but, you know, a single decent-sized creature can blank those. So it's basically, Mang needs to draw something now, or I feel like the game is pretty much over. This is a really key draw step for Mang.
There's one Arc Lightning in the sideboard, and I can't help but think that that would be a pretty good one, but our basic land will not do it. Lithuania is able to square things up just a little bit, get a win on the board, and we're going to get a chance to see a little bit more of our main match very, very shortly, as I'm guessing that now is the time for Li Shiqian and Godenis Vidugaris to get back in their seats, because there's still plenty more combo versus Abzan to see very, very shortly. We can see there Li Shiqian just moving his chair. He was intently watching that entire game, and Godenis looked pretty excited to see one of his countrymen there taking down that game, just to sort of make his life a little bit easier, take the pressure off him just a little bit.
Sure. I mean, a quick glance at these teams, you know, I'm not that familiar with the other Lithuanians or other Hong Kongers, but, you know, Shiqian and Godenis, I believe, have 5 Pro Tour top 8s between them. I mean, those are very experienced captains.
Absolutely. So there's already been all the sideboarding. They've already drawn their opening hands. We get to get straight into the action. A Temple of Malady there for Godenis Vidugaris as he digs for the appropriate bits of disruption and hopefully a little bit of a clock in order to be able to deal with the very powerful combo deck of Jeskai Ascendancy from Li Shiqian.
Yeah, we saw he's got a little bit more disruption now. Probably not enough to really stop the combo deck, but maybe, you know, if he can disrupt it for a little while, he can start attacking it. I don't know about the clock part. his attackers are like Doomwake Giant, Courser of Crewfix. Maybe if he gets a lot of stuff out, he can attack with Farika.
And there's an Elvish Mystic, so that not necessarily a great attacker. More concerning, though, no land drop on turn 2 for Godenis Vidugaris. So he is pretty speculative on this hand, I would say.
Yeah, I mean, you've got a Mystic, and you know Li Shiqian's deck isn't really great at removing Mystic, so you pretty much have a 2-lander. So I don't think you're likely to mulligan it. Maybe if it was an especially bad hand, but if it's got, you know, some of the stuff he's looking for, like Thoughtseize, removal spells for, you know, the non-caryatid creatures, I certainly wouldn't mulligan it.
And looking at his hand here, we can see a couple of copies of Satyr Wayfinder. So functionally, actually, there are plenty of lands. It's just he knew he was going to have a slow start. And if he did draw the second land, he'd be off to the races. Reclamation Sage is in there. He's got a Murderous Cut. There's plenty of action here. It's just not necessarily a very sort of usual standard draw.
Right. I don't think he's worried about having a fast hand anyway, even though that's what you need to beat this deck. Like I was saying, Godenis' deck, it's not like it can decide to be aggressive. This black-green deck has a lot going for it, but none of that is aggression. This deck gets value from its creatures all over the place, but it does not attack fast or hard. So I think he figured he'll keep this hand, no reason to mulligan, see where it goes. My reason for mulliganing this hand if I was Godenis would be maybe because it doesn't have any Thoughtseize. If I have a borderline hand with none of my best card in the matchup, I might consider mulliganing. I would not mulligan this hand due to the fact that it's kind of slow.
Got it. That makes sense. There's sort of a few different levels to sideboarding. Like at some point, you need to be able to cast spells, but beyond that, you actually need to be able to win the game. And casting spells on their own isn't necessarily good enough, depending on the matchup. So a morph here from Li Shiqian. We know that that's likely to be Rattleclaw Mystic. In terms of what Li Shiqian's got going on, it's not. He absolutely is a deck that's looking to go to the races, and what he's got going on is more just sort of build up for later. He's got Commune with Nature to help him find something. He's got Sylvan Caryatid to help build his mana base. He's got to dig through time at some point, but that dig through time, it's not going to be able to lean too hard on cards in the graveyard, so it's not coming down particularly quickly.
Right. Last game, Li Shiqian had a really fast hand, and he went off quickly even through a Thoughtseize. This game, Li Shiqian doesn't have his combo pieces. He has the ability to find them with Commune with Nature and dig through time, but that takes a lot of time. So Godenis, in turn, has time to cast Eidolon of Blossoms and start drawing cards, as well as Courser of Crewfix to draw cards and put lands into play. And he's hoping to find that disruption, the Thoughtseizes and the removal spells. Although now that there's a Caryatid in play, it's mostly just the Thoughtseizes. Well,
he did just draw a Thoughtseize off that Eidolon of Blossoms that he's cast, so all systems go for Godenis Vidugaris. He's just going to have to make sure that he times that Thoughtseize right in order to snipe the appropriate cards out of Li Shiqian's hand.
Yeah, this could be a fun one. The way this game could play out could involve Godenis successfully disrupting Li Shiqian, but not putting him under much of a clock, as he already had a slow hand, and it continues to not be very aggressive. And then Li Shiqian will have, you know, maybe a 3 to 5 turn window to top deck, dig through time, or you know, his combo pieces and get going. If Godenis is drawing extra cards every turn with that Eidolon, though, I don't know. He might be able to find Read the Bones or more Thought Seizes. This could be a rough one for Shitian. We definitely might see a Game 3 here.
Yeah, at the moment, this is a combo deck that's just kind of sitting there playing around. Now, realistically, GoDennis's deck is not necessarily doing loads at the same time, but his board's certainly a lot fuller. And at the moment, I would have to give the edge to GoDennis in terms of what's going on, at least on board.
Yeah, you know now that GoDennis has one Thoughtseize in hand, he's going to be able to take that dig out of Lixian's hand. So Lixian really is going to have to find a lot of combo pieces because he doesn't have many in his hand.
So Commune with Gods showing a good selection of spells there. He's got a Swan Song, which in principle might protect the combo. That's going straight to the graveyard. But it's amazing how that one spell suddenly fills the graveyard quite a bit. So Dig Through Time might seem a little bit more relevant. And that might be enough to get GoDennis to pull the trigger on his Thoughtseize.
Yeah, I think we will definitely see that. I don't know. I guess he's digging now. I thought he would probably dig end of GoDennis's turn. I'm sure that Lixian knows this deck a lot better than me, so he probably has reasons for doing it now. Maybe he wants to get a land and Jeskai Ascendancy and just basically have the combo in play, which, I mean, looks like it actually might happen. Lixian hasn't played a land yet this turn, has he?
I don't believe so, and he's got plenty of cards to choose from here. Not necessarily the full combo, but he's immediately picking up to a very quick, crisp play there from Li Shiqian. And that kind of one of the hallmarks of someone who's played a combo deck a lot is that the sort of the operations side of it, they can just kind of rattle through it. And this is kind of what you need when you're playing some of these combo decks, because often the actual process of going off can be a little bit unwieldy, can take a little bit of time, so you don't want to waste time on the smaller plays.
Yeah, and I was wrong there. Lixian chose to put a Morph and a land into play, presumably a Rattleclaw Mystic. I definitely would trust Lixian, not me on this. This is an extremely complicated deck that Lixian has played a ton with and that I've played very little with. My gut would be to dig in a turn there. This way you don't kind of show GoDennis that you have the ability to combo him off. Maybe he doesn't have a Thoughtseize and maybe he doesn't look for one that hard. I believe GoDennis would have fired the Thoughtseize this turn, regardless of whether Lixian dug main phase or not. But let's pretend, on the other hand, he had some other stuff to do in like a Read the Bones or something. He might not dig for a Thoughtseize. He might just develop his board. So I feel like, you know, there's the downside of digging main phase kind of giving away that you can probably combo off and that GoDennis needs to do what he can to stop him. But there's obviously the upside of maybe, I don't know, making the land drop if he didn't have it, using that 3 mana to put an Ascendancy or Morph in play. Definitely, you know, a complicated turn and a hard deck. This is why I generally avoid decks like this.
It's interesting because, I mean, I guess playing the dig at the time that he did meant that, as it turns out, it worked out very, very well for him. He got to find cards that he could put immediately into play, hence making them safe from Thoughtseize, where if he had... I mean, it really depended on what he was going to draw. If he was going to draw a Retraction Helix, that would have been horrible for him because all of a sudden he can't use that right now and it's just going to get sniped by a Thoughtseize. As it turns out, he drew largely the permanent parts of his combo and he was able to be comparatively safe. But look at this. There is one card that I think is going to stand out for GoDennis Vidugarist to take, that being the Jeskai Ascendancy, which Li Shiqian could not quite cast last turn.
Right. I mean, I think he might have had the 3 to cast it. I'm not sure. I didn't check his exact 3 mana, but it seems likely it was a red, blue, and white because one of them was a Caryatid. I think he chose not to because of Reclamation Sage. Knowing this is after board, he probably figures GoDennis has, you know, access to at least, you know, multiple Sages. And since GoDennis has a lot of cards in hand and has been drawing extra cards, he probably wanted to play it and go off in the same turn, since GoDennis most likely has no instant ways to remove it.
Now, this is interesting. He's just cast a Dragon Mantle on Sylvan Caryatid. I presume that that would be because he knows that he might want to bounce that Dragon Mantle later. He doesn't want to be in a position where GoDennis can simply kill his creature to get rid of it, right? Right.
Plus, he just wants to cycle because he's trying to find a Dig Through Time so that he can find the rest of his combo and go off and win. The Dragon Mantle isn't doing any good sitting in his hand. Since there's virtually no ways to remove a Sylvan Caryatid, the Dragon Mantle is just as good in play as it is in his hand. Aside from maybe the ability to loot when you play it off a Jeskai Ascendancy or something like that. But, you know, you're not going to just wait and wait for that when you have the shot to get the card draw off of the Dragon Mantle and possibly find your combo and win the game, you know, with that extra card.
And Dragon Mantle certainly not going to be the key target for a Reclamation Sage. I'm sure that Li Shiqian would be pretty happy if his 1 mana enchantment was got rid of rather than a Jeskai Ascendancy, because this deck pretty much can't win without a Jeskai Ascendancy in play, right? Right,
but the thing is, Reclamation Sage is a sorcery speed effect in a creature. So I'm not actually sure if he only had 1 Dragon Mantle out, if GoDennis wouldn't have Reclamation Saged it, because it could be a piece of the combo, depending on exactly what Lixian has out. Now that he has 2 out, there's virtually no reason for Go Dennis to Reclamation Sage it, so he's better off keeping the Reclamation Sage in hand to kill an Ascendancy, just in case somehow Li Xian plays one and can't go off that turn. But, yeah, if he had only 1, it would be an interesting decision.
So, Go Dennis here using a fetch land, fetching up a land, gaining a life thanks to his Course of Crufix, and also, crucially, able to effectively tweak his draws a little bit. He knows that he doesn't necessarily want to draw what's on top. He gets a shuffle here and potentially another roll on the dice and finding something that's really going to help him continue to sort of stay in this game. Because I guess that one of the worries when you're playing against combo, the longer the game goes on, the greater the chances are that they're just going to, even if they didn't have the combo, just natural draw into it.
Right. The number 1 thing you can do against this Ascendancy deck in Type 2 is a clock, not disruption. I think that's a mistake a lot of people make. They think, oh, I'll have all this combo hate. Well, the hate is somewhat effective. It's not nothing. But you're much better off just putting them under a fast clock if you can. Now, Go Dennis isn't doing anything wrong. That's not an option for his deck.
Got it. And we saw that a second copy of the Eidolon of Blossoms on the top of Go Dennis' deck. He's got 1 copy of Eidolon of Blossoms already in play, and Li Xian just sort of looking on here as he tries to figure out just quite how many cards Go Dennis is going to be drawing and what that means for him if he wants to try and go off.
Right, it's so hard. It's not that, you know, I can't play a hard deck, for example, but it's that decks like this are very different than a lot of the other decks. Decks like Jeskai and Abzan that play very similar to Limited, that play very similar to, you know, how Standard normally plays. A combo deck like this is much more similar to Storm or Elves. You know, one of these intricate decks that has the ability to see a lot of cards and piece together a bunch of different cards to win. So I think it takes a lot of practice. If I could give advice to the people at home here, it would be, this is a cool deck, and if you want to learn it and play it, you know, that's probably awesome. Don't pick it up and just go to a tournament and play it. If you're going to play Jeskai Ascendancy in Standard, make sure you put in at least 50 to 100 games with the deck before you go to a tournament.
Yeah, I mean, and also, one of the tricky things about combo is that if you get used to, say, playing an aggressive red deck, there's probably going to be an aggressive red deck in every format. You're probably going to be able to, over the course of a number of seasons, a number of years, get a few sort of scripted outlines of play that you can just sort of rely on. Every combo deck's a little bit different, so even if you've played a lot of Elves or you've played a lot of Storm, those are both intricate combo decks. This is also an intricate combo deck, but the operations might be quite different.
Right, playing those decks does not tell you whether you should dig through time on your main phase or end of your opponent's turn. You really have to know this deck through and through to be able to make those kind of hard, complicated decisions.
I mean, it says something that both of these decks, you know, this game's been going on for a little while now. They've got plenty of lands in play, plenty of permanents. The life totals are 19 to 18. We're not going to see the life totals change in a big way until a fairly decisive moment where the game's just kind of ending.
This is the problem in the matchup for Go Dennis, why it's a bad matchup for Go Dennis. Because he was able to disrupt him here with the Thoughtseize. This is, what, turn 6 maybe? And he's still at 19 life, Li Xian is. If this was any sort of an aggro deck, like say Abzan aggro, you know, if they drew 1 Thoughtseize, Li Xian might be dead on this turn, or at least very close to dead. Here, Li Xian knows he's just got basically all the time in the world. It's just a question of if Go Dennis can keep finding Thoughtseizes.
And so each of these players surveying what's now quite a busy board. But the funny thing is that while there's lots of permanents on the board, in terms of decision-making, not that many of them are really creating a huge sort of gravity around them, creating lots of sort of changes to decision-making for either player. It's more about trying to suss out what's going on in each other player's hand.
Right, and Li Xian is close to or possibly able to cast that dig. It looks like he's got 3, 4, 5 mana. So it looks like he was, if he didn't dig, I assume he was short. It looked like if he was short, he was like 1 short. It looked extremely close to it. I actually thought he could cast it, which, like I said, he knows this deck way better than I do. But if he could cast it, I definitely don't understand why he wouldn't end of turn it, since he's in a great position to just untap and win. Oh, there we go. He couldn't unmorph the Rattleclaw Mystic for mana because it would die. And I guess, well, he doesn't need it in play. I still might have digged in spite of that if he could. Let's say he tapped the 2-1 Morph, he gets the 3 mana, but the Rattleclaw goes right to the yard because it already has -1/-1. Mm-hmm. But I assume he gets the 3 mana, right?
I believe so, yes.
So he would have had 3, 4, 5 from the Carotid and 3 cards in his yard. So he would have lost the Rattleclaw Mystic but been able to dig in a turn. I'm guessing that the reason he didn't do that is because he can just dig main phase and that it's not a huge difference. So I think he's probably making the correct play, though I don't think this Rattle Claw is a ton of importance in play. I guess it gives him more outs to go off without the 0 mana artifact, since he has 2 mana producers in play. So I'm sure that's Lithuana is making the correct play, because as I said, he knows this deck a lot better than I do, and we're all here figuring it out together.
Yeah, it's interesting. With 2 mana producing creatures in play, then it means that Li Shiqian, if he gets 1 Ascendancy in play, then many of his spells are net mana generators, and that means that at the point that he's going off, he can do an awful lot more. The other thing is, ultimately, if he wants to win, he needs to be attacking with creatures. His Sylvan Caryatid can't attack. So it may well be that he's turning around and saying, if I want to be able to go off, I need to have at least 1 creature in play.
Yeah, that's a good point. I don't necessarily know if he plays some kind of win condition, that if he just has infinite mana, if he can, win the game this turn with only a Caryatid in play, or if he does need to be able to attack with that Rattleclaw.
I mean, there's a couple of interesting options. He can potentially cast a creature, then Twin Flame it, even if it wasn't in play at the start of the turn. The copy has haste, so he can kind of do it that way, but going off becomes a little bit harder when you start having to jump through some of those hoops. Right.
So either way, I think Lishian probably made the correct play. I think he just figured, I'll untap, the Rattleclaw will stay in play, and I'll do the dig on my turn. I've got plenty of mana. And, if he had found the Jeskai Ascendancy off the dig, which was, extremely likely because it's 7 cards, I think he would have probably been able to win this turn. I mean, he needed the Helix too. We know he has it because we can see his hand.
Yeah, that Helix is really important now, because with those Dragon Mantles, he can potentially create situations where he's drawing lots of cards, bouncing the Dragon Mantle, drawing lots more cards. There's a lot of stuff that he can get going very, very soon. He's 1 piece away. Right. This is looking really close now. Right.
All he needed was the Jeskai Ascendancy, but he didn't find it. So now I think he's passing the turn back to Godennis. And, I mean, he's not going to take 14 this turn, but Godennis has the potential to do some really big turns. He's pretty much firing on all cylinders now. He's got Courser, Doomwake Giant, Eidolon. So he's going to be able to put lands into play, draw extra cards, give creatures -1/-1. It's going to be interesting to see what Godennis can do this turn.
Let's take a little look at Godennis' hand here. I mean, something really scary that once you've got a couple of Eidolons in play is certainly not beyond the realms of possibility, is just casting lots of enchantments in 1 turn and potentially sniping those Sylvan Caryatids. And if that happens, then Li Shiqian is in a huge amount of trouble this game.
If Godennis could play 3 enchantments in this turn, I believe Li Shiqian would concede the game. The thing is, Godennis' enchantments are quite expensive, so I don't believe that's really possible. He's not playing any 1-mana enchantments, or I don't even know if he's playing any 2-mana enchantments. I think his enchantments, they all cost 3+ mana.
So as it is, Godennis Verduga is going to have to content himself with having 7 cards in hand, lots of options, a few ways of drawing cards, and a bunch of creature removal.
Yeah.
It's not the worst situation to be in.
No, but it's not the best either, because I think Li Shiqian is still just a Jeskai Ascendancy away from winning. I think what we'll see from Godennis will be this Eidolon to try and hopefully top deck a Thoughtseize. I mean, it only really sees 1 card, because it draws 2, and we know the top card is a Temple. But I don't know what other good options he has this turn. He has to try and find the Thoughtseize.
So now that he's got 2 Eidolon Blossoms in play, firstly, this Eidolon Blossoms draws him 2 cards. Every enchantment he plays following this is going to draw him 2 cards. So have we got the Doomwake Giant trigger on there somewhere too? Are we going to see? Yeah, there goes the Rattleclaw Mystic. So now Li Shiqian, all he has in terms of creatures is Sylvan Caryatids, currently -1/2 creatures.
Yeah, I don't think he needed that Rattleclaw in play to win at all. But like we know, he doesn't have Jeskai Ascendancy. So, I mean, I really think this game is mostly just going to come down to if Li Shiqian can find Jeskai Ascendancy on his next turn or not.
It's interesting, because we've almost reached a point in the game now where Thoughtseize might not be quite so good, because there's been so many cards drawn by Li Shiqian that, realistically, the card he needs might just be on the top of his deck. As soon as he draws it, it might simply be coming into play. The window to get rid of it is getting smaller.
Well, I mean, that does happen. In this exact case, he's holding the Retraction Helix.
Yeah.
So, I mean, in this exact case, I think the Thoughtseize would have been very good for Godennis, greatly lowering Li Shiqian's chances of winning. But we will see that. We will see situations where, the Jeskai Ascendancy has to be on top or is already in play, and Thoughtseize isn't as effective. The thing is, this deck really needs, like, a lot of different combo pieces. So, I mean, it has to hold some of them. If it puts them in play, then Godennis can Reclamation Sage them, let's say. Mm-hmm. So I think that Thoughtseize overall is very effective against Jeskai Ascendancy. The problem is there's no clock. So if you Thoughtseize them and then you don't attack them at all, they're eventually going to draw pieces. In this game, we're seeing it's turn 7 maybe. I don't know the exact turn, 6, 7, 8. Certainly late in the game. And, I mean, Godenis has reduced Li Xian to 5, so this is his last turn, unless he finds things, I think, because Godenis has out a bunch of creatures. But obviously, nobody would consider, say, turn 8 a quick clock.
Absolutely not. And we see here there's a bit of a judge call. I think they're just trying to make sure that all of the minutiae of the game are absolutely in order, so that, for example, the amount of cards in graveyard, the amount of life that each player is on. Certainly, once you get down to 5 life, you want to make sure that that's exact. 1 point of life doesn't seem like too much when you're on 20, but when you're in single digits, every single point counts. It looks like there's a bit of backtracking going on just to figure out exactly how much mana has been available on each turn.
From the conversation they're having, it sounds as though Li Xian maybe used an extra mana, like cast a spell 1 mana more than he paid for it, but he had the mana to do it with the 2 on-tap Caryatids that he didn't even choose to block with, which is what Li Xian's pointing out. I'm speculating now, so I don't want to tell the people at home like that's what happened, because I don't really know. If that's what happened, it's certainly an honest mistake, because there's no advantage to be gained there, because Li Xian was definitely not going to block with those Caryatids, as you saw he didn't. So
it sounds like actually there's concern that there may have been 2 lands played last turn by Li Xian.
Right, which is very similar in the sense that he used them, and he's telling Godenis, hey, I have the mana. Instead of playing that extra land, I could just tap one of these Caryatids. I don't know, how the judges will fix this or what will happen. The only thing I'm saying is that it is clear that Li Xian did not do this on purpose. He did not need to put an extra land in play last turn.
Yeah, it's a complicated situation, and this is one of the reasons that combo decks are sometimes a little daunting. I know you've said that you kind of try and avoid playing them where you can, is that there's so many operations that every now and again something very, very simple becomes kind of complicated.
Yeah, I mean, these decks are hard. These decks are complicated. They're doing a lot of things. I mean, Magic is a hard game. We see all kinds of difficult scenarios, but I don't mind saying it is a lot easier to play Abzan than it is to play Jeskai Ascendancy combo.
And each of these players here just waiting on as the judges confer to work out exactly what the best solution is for this potential little problem that they've had in their game. But Li Xian here, it's funny because as much as he's obviously very keen to find out what the judge ruling is, I'm sure he's much more keen to just find out what the top card of his deck is, because on 5 life, facing down the board that he is going to have to draw pretty well here.
Right, I really don't know exactly what happened. If it's what we think, that he played 2 lands and used them, I really hope they just let him tap the Caryatid and pick up a land, or that they just let the thing stay in play at this point. Because clearly, Li Xian did not need to play that extra land. He could just pick it up and tap the Caryatid instead, and the game would be exactly the same. And it's been such a great game. I want to see if Li Xian, top decks what he needs to win, or if he loses and they go to game 3. I don't want this game to become ruined.
Yeah, I suddenly have flashbacks to the very last round of Pro Tour Kanzatakir, where Li Xian was back against the wall, had to top deck exactly the card he needed to be able to get the win to make top 8, inched it off the top of his deck, very, very slowly drew it up onto the table. I mean, we're not going to see a bonfire moment, but effectively this is kind of a bonfire moment. If he draws the right card, it's all go. If he draws the wrong card, well, it's kind of all over.
Yeah, if this was game 3, I mean, he could flip the top card of his deck if he wanted. I mean, if it's a Jeskai Ascendancy, he's just off and he wins. If it's something that searches for it, he has to cast it. I mean, people don't like to give things away, but I don't know what exactly he'd be representing if he drew it, cast nothing, and passed the turn. I'm pretty sure Godenis would play as many enchantments as he could and attack with all his guys.
So all sorts of players around there. We can see that there's both the Hong Kong and Lithuania team watching on here. We've got the head judge, Kevin Dupre, coming along just to establish the exact situation, what's going on between these players.
Yeah, and I'm not a judge, and I don't know the penalties all that well. I believe that, a lot when you have great judges like this, they should be able to look at the board and kind of figure out what's going on, like a head judge in the World Championships. I don't have any idea what the resolution to this will be. Do you?
No, I think that this is going to be one of those situations where it's safer for us not to speculate and leave it to the judges. And it looks like both players on either side are kind of taking the same tack on that. At this point, it's clear that there's a concern. It's going to get resolved. And this is really, where the experience of the judging community comes to shine.
Yeah, and if you can fix this, you certainly want to, because even though Li Xian didn't need that land on his last turn, who's to say the string of card drawing spells he could play on this turn potentially looking for a Jeskai Ascendancy? So you don't want him to have an extra land in play. I don't know whether it's too late to back up or not. I don't know what'll happen. But, I mean, I'm confident that Li Xian, based on the game state, did not do that on purpose. And hopefully this can get fixed and we can see the natural play out of this game. That's what I'm rooting for as a fan.
Absolutely. We want to see as many great games as Magic as possible. And bear in mind that at this point, Hong Kong's leading 1-0. Li Xian is leading 1-0, but there's a whole other match. Even if this one goes south for Hong Kong, they still have their extra match going on to be able to potentially win through and get up to 4-0-1. Obviously, Godunus Vidugir is very keen to try and make sure that doesn't happen by winning one back for Lithuania here.
Do we know if they're holding that match or playing?
They're currently holding that match. We can see all 4 players here are watching on this one. We will make sure that there are appropriate time extensions for that hold, so we're not missing out on any magic here, is I guess, the key point for everyone viewing at home.
I have 6 cards exactly. Yeah, I think you flip this one over and up at some point. It's the last time.
So many levels of judges here making sure that everything is appropriately figured out.
And the commune.
So which would be this and that, and commune with nature.
And commune with nature.
Is that bit? And was this?
Take this, commune, take this. He did not have this in play, but he just played this.
Yeah. He just played this. Yes. Okay. And was this tapped or not?
Not tapped.
Not tapped. And were there any mana left?
No, he was tapped out. He had the only thing he had up is this. Yes, the only thing he had up was this.
Okay. So, if my understanding is correct, dig through time, exiling 6.
Yes.
Dragon Mantle.
Yes.
Commune with the gods.
Yes.
Right? And no mana untapped end of turn.
Right.
No land untapped.
Yes.
No land untapped. Yes, no land. So, I seem to conclude there have been 2 lands played last turn.
Okay.
Does that make sense to everybody? If we all agree on what happened in the previous turn,
that is what happened, I think. I mean,
the turn, last turn or the turn before?
the turn before.
The turn before, I morph this creature.
You?
Did I morph? No.
No, you morphed the turn before that to play.
So, but based on what you told me and based on the information I had,
Can you follow how do you get? Can you follow how he get to the conclusion?
What'd you say?
Yeah, we go back to turn ago. So previous turn, okay. Dig through time, exiling 6 cards, okay. Dragon Mentor, yes.
Oh, I still got this. At that time, I got this too.
Yes. Yes.
And then he cast, and then this died.
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay. But that does not change much because if it that doesn't change much to the fact that there were no lands untapped.
Right.
Were they?
The turn before? The turn before I got some land untapped. The turn you cast is I got this untapped. This is
This attacked twice.
No, first time.
Successfully determined that this is one of the more complicated board states to try and reverse. Hopefully the judge will be able to get us to a resolution shortly.
Okay, so say if I play 2 lands, I accidentally played 2 lands. So what? Yeah, what's the?
And right now, where are we? You attacked.
Yes.
Yes. You attacked this turn.
Yes.
No blocks. No blocks. And afterwards, you cast a new Idol of Blossom.
Yes.
That's it.
And I stopped the game.
I joined 2 cards. Yeah.
I might have played a land too.
I played at this land.
Yeah, I think I played a land.
So,
It's already 10 minutes.
I'm aware. So, I I cannot determine with certainty what happened, and the game state has evolved probably too much for, even if there was an extra land, be able to safely back up the game because of the multiple draws.
Actually, I could still tap this.
He literally can just tap that and pick up a land. So it is not hard to back up.
If that's what
If you're okay with that, I can be okay with that.
I'll be fine with that if that's.
Yes.
Yeah, make sure I'm not trying to cheat.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I'm not broken.
I like this. I like this resolution. It is very clear that Li Xian was not trying to cheat. He didn't need to play an extra land. So he does, the land goes back in his hand, so he doesn't get the advantage of having an extra land in play. I'm sure he'll receive a warning. You know, he made an illegal play, clearly not intentionally. And the game is fixed to the exact state it should be now. He just paid for the last spell with the Caryatid. He wasn't going to block with the Caryatid with a Doomwake Giant in play. I think we can see the natural play out of this game.
Absolutely. Very, very happy to be able to see us getting back into this game here. And it's something that I think, obviously that judge ruling took a little bit of time, but I think that kind of just reinforces to me the strength of the judge process, that they didn't want to just get a quick fix but potentially leave a problem behind. They did go back through, they reconstructed the turn, they figured out what was going on, and now we get to see whether or not Li Xian has drawn the one card he needed in order to... Oh, look
my
at that.
God. It's just a Jeskai Ascendancy right off the top.
Straight off the top, Jeskai Ascendancy.
And now he's infinite, just like that.
There's a Retraction Helix. That's going to target one of those copies of Dragon Mantle. He's got 2 mana producers. He can tap one of them to cast a Dragon Mantle, draw a card, do some looting, untap everything. He can use the other one to bounce the Dragon Mantle. He's got exactly what he needs. You can see the smiles on the faces of the Hong Kong crowd there. All of a sudden, from nowhere, Li Xian, after a huge judge call, which potentially meant that we were going to be waiting around for a long time to find out the result of this match, is able to square things up. Li Xian just taking it. Yes, we had our little moment of hiatus there, but imagine how sort of dull that game would have been if we'd just sort of gone, oh, he needs it, then he'd immediately drawn it. We got 10 minutes of suspense. That's how you put a sweat on.
Yeah, but imagine how good Dennis feels after sitting there waiting for 10 to 20 minutes, and then, all right, it's your turn. Let's see if you top deck. Oh, you did.
And what a great choice for this tournament for Li Xian. That combo deck, very, very few players on the planet that are able to play the combo deck quite as well as Li Xian.
Yeah.
He's already put in the reps. He came into this tournament knowing that he had a great deck that he could play in a way that perhaps a lot of other teams really couldn't. He played against the champion of the Lithuanian team, Denis Vidugaris, and all told, it was a comparatively straightforward matchup for him in terms of what he had to do. He just had to rely on his team to be able to pick up an extra win there, which they were able to do. So that, a successful win there from Hong Kong over Lithuania. And another result then, currently 4-0-1. So that is the end of our round here, our round 5. Our round 5 here at the World Magic Cup. We're going to send things back to the news desk and find out what's been going elsewhere in the tournament.
Okay, boys and girls. It's getting to showtime and business, because with 5 rounds gone, the nations are starting to fall. New Zealand is gone, they're at 0-5. Bolivia is gone, 0-5. Australia, 0-4-1. Out the door, they're gone. Belgium, 1-4. Mark Dictus, Alexander Darris, Nicholas van der Hallen, gone. Out of the tournament, 3-4, cannot make the top 32. You will not see Belgium in pool play tomorrow. That's one of the big scalps. But even bigger, with the greatest respect to the Belgians, Canada is gone. 2 Pro Tour champions in Alexander Hayne and Sean McLaren, and then Daniel Fournier, David Goldfarb. 1-4, the best they can do with 2 rounds to go. 3-4 will not be back tomorrow. Sorry, Canada, you will not be adding to your excellent record in team competition. Macedonia are out, Ecuador are out, and Ireland are out. Right now, those are the only teams we can say with certainty will not be winning the World Magic Cup. Meanwhile, Slovak Republic, Fantastic 1-2 punch of Even Flock and Matej Big Z Zatlkai. They are at 5-0. That's because they took down Frank Karsten and the Netherlands. They fall to 4-1. Also 5-0. Team Malaysia, this is Raymond Tan. Joe So is on this team, the younger brother of Terry So, who was an invitational winner. He was the Rakdos Augur Mage, had his likeness imprinted on the cards when that was a thing back in the day. Serbia, Alexa Tellerov in his 7th team competition. They seemed very confident last night, with good reason. They've beaten the Finns, who are 2-2-1, so still alive for day 2. Serbia 4-1. England up to 3-2. They've defeated the Vikings from Iceland, who are 2-3. Ukraine 3-2. And as we head on down, Czech Republic, they beat Chinese Taipei. That's a very mouth-watering encounter. The Czech Republic go to 4-1. Chinese Taipei are now 3-2. The Israelis, Shahar Shenhar, still alive, chasing the dream of the double. Trophy in one hand for the World Magic Cup by Sunday afternoon. Trophy in the other hand, the World Championship by Sunday night. Could still happen for Team Israel, who, my word, they're delivering the goods for their team captain here on day 1. But what we're going to do now, we're going to change pace a little. You had a chance to look at what you would do for Team Unified Standard. So now we get to see in the real world, what are these teams actually doing? We've got the whole Brazilian team in, and we're going to see them one at a time, and we head across for our first ever Team Unified Standard deck tech.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Tournament Center here at the World Magic Cup. I'm Brian David Marshall, and I'm joined by Seat A, Mateus Rossetto of Team Brazil. Mateus, tell us what deck you ended up playing. It's kind of a last-minute audible, a last-minute change based on the results of the World Championship.
Yeah, we saw the Sunblack list, and we kind of liked it because we were testing blue-white heroic, and we didn't like it in the train. So we didn't like mono red neither. So we kind of liked it, but we expect a lot less control. So we changed the Swift Spears for Rebel Master, and we increased the mana curve. So we added extra land.
Okay. And so red-white tokens. This is the Plymouth Rock deck tech we did with Sam Black from the World Championship, and yeah. So the Goblin Rabble Master is the huge change there for you.
Yes, and the fourth Stoke.
Oh, for the 4th Stoke the Flames?
Yeah.
Okay. And you talked a little bit about an expected metagame, part of why you chose this deck. What are you expecting to face against here?
We expected a lot of green decks. One of the 3 decks would be a green deck based on Cariat, then Cursor.
Sure.
And the second would be a Mardu or a Head White, and the third would be a fast aggro, a heroic, mono red, or
this deck. So when you choose to play this deck, you make a decision. We're going to play red, white, heroic. What other decks can't you play now because you're using this deck?
Yeah.
Like what decks does that lock you out of?
It locks out the Mardu because of Chained, because of Stoke, because of Rebel Master, because of Hardeling, and also Mono Head aggro because of Hardeling, Rebel Master, Stoke. Lightning Strike is a problem card. Everyone wants it.
So, and you've been very happy with the deck so far. How has it performed for you in the rounds you've played?
Yeah, I played it twice. My last game I won, but my first I got unlucky and I faced UB control.
Oh no, blue-black control is a bad matchup?
Yeah.
Okay.
Luckily my friends won, so.
Okay, but you would, if someone was going to play, regardless if it's Unified Standard or Singular Standard, you think this is a good choice to play at FNM and on Magic Online?
It's strong. It's a strong deck.
Okay.
It has a lot of synergies, and I kind of like it.
Okay, so we know red-white tokens. We're going to come back and see what the other 2 decks that complement this look like as we go through the other members of Team Brazil.
All right, thanks very much, BDM. We'll get them sorted out, but more results coming in. 2 more teams that are done. El Salvador are 1-4, so at least well done. They got to win. They can go home saying they had won at least one. They could win as many as 3, but they will not be back tomorrow. Another team that will be super disappointed with their 1-4 status, that is Team Croatia. Tony Portolan, who's been here a bunch of times, I think this is his 5th team. Well, they're not coming back tomorrow. 2 more rounds to play out for national pride. But Croatia cannot now win the World Magic Cup. Some other results coming in. Scotland over Venezuela. The Scots are up to 3-2. Still very much alive. Probably 2 win-and-ins. The way we see it, last year, again to remind you, only 1 team with a positive record out of 71 teams, 72 this year, failed to make day 2 with a positive record. That was Sweden. They were 33rd. This year, Sweden have been setting the pace. They are currently 4-1. That's because they have defeated Dmitry Budakov, Zoya Belova, and co. for the Russian Federation. Sweden is at 4-1. You can be pretty certain you will see Ola Rada and Joe Larson and Lova Jansa and Noya Pabari back again tomorrow. So they're in. We'll bring you more results in a little bit, but right now, waiting for us over at the news desk, is Thiago Saporito of Brazil, and he's with Hall of Famer, Mr. Randy Buehler.
Hello and welcome. Continuing the Unified Sealed Deck Tech, I'm here with Thiago Saporito. First of all, congratulations, 4-1 so far. It's got to feel great.
Yeah, feels good.
It's got to feel good. Now, let's talk about this deck. You're playing basically green-red monsters?
Yes. I think like it's a better deck than Temur because it has better mana base.
Okay.
And I don't play Yavimacles because Will is playing Yavimacles.
Aha.
So
it's interesting, right? It's a green-red monsters deck, but there's no Courser and there's no Caryatid.
Yeah, Willie likes the green mid-range decks, so I try to build without those cards.
Sure. So you actually split the green then?
Yeah.
2 different green decks, and split the red too. I noticed the 2 Lightning Strike is not exactly a normal choice.
Yeah. Yesterday I was playing with 4 Lightning Strikes, so we saw the Sunblack deck list, and he only runs 2, so we had 2 Savage Punch to the main deck.
Aha!
We fought like only creature decks, so we didn't expect like many control decks. So Savage Punch is a great card.
Interesting. So once you wanted to work in the Sam Black deck, you lost 2 of your Lightning Strikes.
Yes.
Are the Savage Punches working out? Have you gotten to punch anything yet?
Oh, no, I didn't draw it, but I got paired against Blue-Black control and draw it, so it was really bad.
Okay. Now, for the red-green monsters, were there other sacrifices that you had to make because of Unified Standard?
Oh, the Sunblack deck list run 4 Chandras, but now we can only play 2.
Okay.
And the sideboard, Magnet Sprays and Peak Eruption, but not a great deal.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, what was it that led you guys to split up the green cards? It sounds like Willie, we'll get Willie Adel in here momentarily to talk about the deck he's playing, but he's playing a Sidisi Whip deck?
Yes.
And you guys had to divide up the green cards. How did that, you just went one with aggro and one mid-range and there's enough to go around?
Yes, because this deck doesn't run any of green cards that William runs, only the Hornet Nest, so we split this one.
Okay.
So the rest, like, I'm more aggro and he's more control, I guess.
Now, is this a deck that you like in general in Standard?
Oh, no, I wouldn't play if it wasn't Unified constructed.
Okay, what was the reason that you guys thought this would be particularly good for Unified constructed? Was it the metagame that you were expecting?
Yes, I guess it can beat the green decks, the Corsair decks.
Okay.
And has a great match against the other decks.
Okay.
So I'm happy with this deck.
Nice. Now, did you guys, I guess you've got a little bit of white in the tokens deck. You've got the blue. Yeah, it's kind of fun. The thing that I find most interesting about this Unified Standard, I think, is that in the past it's been the marquee cards that have usually defined what you do. But here, you can play all the big superstars, so your Butchers of the Horde, your Sidisis. There aren't multiple decks that want those. It's the monocolored cards that it seems like are the ones people are fighting over. Lightning Strike, Corsair Caryatid, and the monocolor cards are the ones you have to divide up.
Yes.
This is a really interesting take on how to do that. I like the way you've managed to overlap in green and yet just get the best out of both worlds.
Yeah.
Cool list. And now, is this deck something you think you would recommend somebody take to Friday Night Magic if they really want to attack with Sarkhan and Pelucranos and Stormbreath Dragon?
It's a good deck to play. I like playing the deck.
Awesome.
But not like a PTQ, I wouldn't play this deck.
Fair enough. If you're looking for a chance to bust out the big monsters, here's one way to do it. Thanks, Tiago.
Thank you.
I will send it back over to Rich, and stay tuned. We'll finish this deck tech and get a look at what Willie Edel's up to.
Yeah, these team decks are extraordinary because there's just such a jigsaw puzzle. So many of you tweeted to us your 3 archetypes, the way you would interlock the pieces. Thanks for that. And we're getting a sense of what Brazil do. And we're starting to get a sense of what other people do. We've seen a lot of blue-white heroic decks coming out. And you already see Sam Black's influence on this tournament, and also Yuya Watanabe with his Jeskai tokens. So, a couple more results to bring you. Hong Kong, you saw Li Shichan with that Jeskai Ascendancy. Now, Hong Kong, we said earlier in the day, their draw, would it come back to haunt them or would it be a plus? Right now, it's a plus. They are undefeated at 4-0-1, so whatever happens, they will be back tomorrow because there's no way that 32 teams get better than 4-2 and a draw. That point guarantees them right now their participation in pool play. But remember, seeding is everything. If you are in the top 16 coming into tomorrow, you will be either a 1 seed or a 2 seed. And what that means is if you go 2-1 in your pool of 3 matches tomorrow morning in Khans of Tarkir team sealed again, you will be guaranteed a place in the top 16 for tomorrow afternoon. Once you're there, again, if you're a top 2 seed, 2-1 is enough. Now, it could be enough if you're one of the bottom 2 seeds, because it could be 2-1, 2-1, and a pair of 1 and 2s to get you in. But fundamentally, for top 2 seeds, it could be worth an entire round out of 3. So the wins need to keep on coming. I'm glad to say the players are ready. Over at the video wall, let's hand you back. I'm losing track of who everyone is, but I think it's Brian David Marshall, and I think, yep, here's Willie Adel.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to the Tournament Center. Brian David Marshall here with Willie Adel and the 4th member of the Brazilian team, Gabriel Fair. Willie, you've had to think about standard a lot this week. You had to think about unified standard. You had to think about individual standard. Both times you've played Sidisi Web.
Yes.
In fact, you had all 5 members of the team you practiced with for the World Championship on the deck. Now, I thought it was very interesting when I looked at that deck, that you had Ashiok in the main.
For the wolves.
The main build that you had. It's sitting in the sideboard here.
Well, for the wolves, we expect a lot of control and a lot of like green mid-range mirrors all the time. So the guys convinced me that it was better to put the Ashok's on main deck. At the end, I didn't like the Ashok's main deck and moved them back to sideboard. I don't think they belong to main deck. And especially here, when like there's only 30% chance, like there'll be only 1 green deck on the other side. So that's a 30% chance you'll face a mirror. So I want to improve my chances in the other matchups. So instead of the Ashok's, I include like Farika, which says is probably better than Ashok in the mirror match, and another Doomwake Giant, which is supposed to be very good against all these token decks. Like Yuya had a very sweet deck. Some Black has another very good deck. So like I think people could pick it up. So I added another Doomwake Giant to the main deck.
How did you have decks that you were set on coming into the week that you thought you'd play here, and did they change based on the World Championship? So I know Sam Black's deck, for example.
Yes, like from the beginning, we are pretty much set on a Caustic Carriage deck, a Lightning Strike deck, and something else. This something else varies from like Blue-White Heroic, from like Mono Red, even Mono Black Aggro. In the end, like we didn't like the Blue-White Heroic at all, and when we saw like Sans list, I think we consider that there's not much overlap with our head green deck. That's pretty much only the Lightning Strikes. So we thought, oh, it looks a good deck, and maybe we can try. So.
Okay, so I have to ask you about the Sylvan Caryatids. You have 2 green decks. Are you just stealing Sylvan Caryatids from Tiago's deck? Why would you do that to him?
No, I'm not the main. Like, I mean, even if it was like an individual tournament, if people are playing like aggressive green builds, such as Temur or just Gru, like Gru bits, they don't want like Sylvan Caryatids at all. Like they have a lot of better like mana creatures in form like Elvish Mystic and Rattleclaw Mystic, and they don't have like the Defender creature in a super aggressive deck. So I think they don't overlap at all. The only overlap we had on the team was with the Reds. Like on the Red, between like some Black deck, the Boros token decks, and the Green Red.
Yeah, I was kind of surprised when you told me that Tiago would rather have the Rattleclaw Mystic than Sylvan Caryatid, because you said jumping to 6 mana, and you love attacking for 2, don't you?
Well, it's better than don't attack at all. Like, from the beginning, from the point that he started to block with a carry, actually, if he has it, he's probably losing. Like so, I don't think that any reason to play like carry actually on a super aggressive like regular game.
Has carry gotten a little worse in a World of Seeker of the Way, which is able to very easily pump past a carry
I don't think so. Like you need carry for a different deck. Like I can't see like you playing CDZ with a Rotaclaw Mystic, for example, even if he gives back mana. So like you need something like more defensive, like more robust, like something like they don't play Drawing Sorrows in live. So I think they're totally different animals. Like Rotaclaw, Elvish Mystic is for like aggressive decks, maybe combo decks, maybe super fast decks, and carry is something for to the long game, like some more mid-range.
Okay. Well, I'm going to let you get back out to the floor. You've got a couple more rounds to go. You've locked up day 2, more or less. You're a little bit of a sweat, but probably not. Your tiebreaker should be good. So for Team Brazil and Willie Adel, this is Brian David Marshall sending it back to the news desk.
All right, thanks very much to Brian David Marshall, Willie Adel, and Gabriel Fair, who is, of course, the alternate for this portion of the tournament, played in their incredibly successful morning in Khans of Tarkir Sealed, and then comes back this afternoon as the coach of the other 3. But we wanted to get him there because he is very much part of Team Brazil and their success so far. Why don't I tell you about some more teams that are not coming back tomorrow for sure. Luxembourg, Steve Hatto and the guys, Dennis Skornik is on that team. They are 1-4 out the door with 2 rounds to go. Puerto Rico, the runners-up from 2012, the inaugural World Magic Cup in Indianapolis, behind Team Chinese Taipei. They will not be coming back tomorrow. They are 1-4, and so is Team Cyprus. That's Daniel Antonio. I guess they'll be a little disappointed. A very small community, but a very passionate one, and hopefully they can pick up another couple of wins down the stretch. But 1-4 means they will not be in the mix for top 32. The guillotine, well, we're in France, I guess it would be that, is coming every round. Right now, the 1 and 3s were on the block. In our next round, it's going to be people again, just one more round up, more and more closer to the end. You must get a positive record if you want to be in. Someone's likely to miss out even there. But you saw Li Shichan this round with his Jeskai Ascendancy deck. He found the Jeskai Ascendancy, and that means Hong Kong are 4-0-1. Who knew that that was coming his way when he came into the building first thing this morning to talk to our very own Marshall Sutcliffe?
Hi there, I've got Li Shichan from Hong Kong with me. Li, welcome to Nice. What does it mean to you to play for your country, Hong Kong?
This is the 3rd time I play for Hong Kong, and you know Hong Kong has been through a little bit of something. So I think now we try to find a way to make Hong Kong being under the spotlight in the international scene.
Good, yeah. Now, when it comes to your team, how much testing were you able to do beforehand?
We do lots of team seal, I think. Yeah, but for the standard, our preparation is like for the meta game in the Pro Tour instead of the meta game evolving in these 2 months. So I don't know what turns out to be for the standard, but Team Zero we are really confident.
Now you're the captain for the team. What's it like taking on a leadership role for your other countrymen?
Basically, I talk about my experience in the last few years and talk about how to do better in the team still and assign each one the role during the deck building. But for standard, we basically test by ourselves.
You test by yourselves?
Yeah.
Once you figured out the deck?
Yes, then we try to make ourselves very good in playing the deck instead of try to break another meta game.
Right, okay, oh, I see. So you're concentrating on getting really good with the decks that you chose.
Yeah, we want to play the best in our own game.
Oh, okay, that's interesting. Now, how much help do you think you're going to give the other players while you're playing?
I think in my past experience, I think only the player who is playing know their game best. So unless there is some like onboard kill they're missing, or I think the less comment you're giving your teammate, that will be the better.
So you're going to be a little more hands-off with your team?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay, now what is your confidence level? Very confident in your team, medium confident, just happy to be here?
I think I'm very confident. Yeah, very confident. Maybe construct a little bit off, but Team Zero is good.
Okay, well, I wish you all the luck, Li Shitian.
Thank you.
All right, so that was Li Shichan there. Best of luck to him for 0-1. Brian David Marshall, we've got a couple of minutes. The players are in the feature match area for our round 6 feature match. They are in mulligan mode, though, so... Well, we'll see what happens with that. But why don't we get a look while we take a minute to take our breath, because that Brazil feature was like, where are they going? There's more people are like, stop. But great stuff to see how that puzzle came to be.
I thought the Sylvan Caryatid Rattle Claw Mystic dynamic was really interesting. You know, it was like, oh, you're stealing cards. No, we're not. We actually don't want Sylvan Caryatid in this more aggressive deck. We want Rattleclaw Mystic.
Okay, so the players are ready. They have finished with their mulligans. I can tell you that our round 6 feature match, well, it's the battle of the 5-0s. Now, you might have expected to see the Slovak Republic up there. They are at 5-0 with Ivan Flock and Matej Zatlkai, but they are up against a team that not many people would have expected. Malaysia at 5-0 with Raymond Tan. Let's get down to the feature match area for round 6 of the World Magic Cup.